Point of View is sponsored by First National Bank. First National Bank. How can we help you?
Welcome to The Point of View. This is your favorite current affairs show on television. Here on The Point of View, we pick the right topics, get the right guests, ask them relevant questions on issues that matter to you. It's an interactive show. Get in touch via the WhatsApp number on the screen. If you have a comment, you can also share your views on the stream underneath where you're watching, whether on Facebook or YouTube. So there's a big debate tonight, and we'll be discussing a very important topic. It's about Ghana's power sector and proposals by the electricity company for an upward adjustment in tariffs. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
Good Day Energy Drink keeps you going. Available in major supermarkets and shops near you. Excessive drinking can be detrimental to your health. Not recommended for persons under 18 years, lactating mothers, pregnant women, and people sensitive to caffeine. This advert is FDA approved.
Welcome back to the show. So the Electricity Company of Ghana, ECG, a few days ago made a proposal for an upward adjustment in tariffs. They made this known at a forum of other stakeholders. Now, according to the ECG, they need more funds to support the operational activities. The MD of the company, Kwame Ajimambudu, at a public forum on Thursday said, while he's aware that the proposal will only materialize after approval from the PURC, he believes it is critical for ECG to have access to more funds to enable it operate efficiently. Now, in response to this, the PURC has said that they will analyze electricity companies' request for an increase in tariffs. And in fact, the PURC, in a small interview with City News, said that they've received the proposal, so they confirmed that ECG has actually proposed an increase and that they will address the matter in due course. Before we get to the debate and speak to my guest via the platform we've created, I want to give you an overview of where we are with the power sector, because the request has been met by some very strong resistance, partly because of the timing. We've been going through a period of intermittent power cuts. Now, we're told that this has been occasioned not by generation problems, but by transmission challenges, with Gridco being at the center. Don't forget, a couple of weeks ago, I spoke to the Gridco CEO on this very show, went to the Gridco head office to find out what was happening there. So Kojo Ajiman has put together this report summarizing the state of the power sector as at now.
Ghana's electricity sector dates back to the Gold Coast era, where electricity supply was mainly from diesel generators owned by industrial establishments, including factories and mines, as well as other institutions such as hospitals and schools. The sector was revolutionized with the completion of the Akosombo hydroelectric power station in 1965, which also saw the export of electricity to neighboring countries like Togo, Burkina Faso, and Benin. Electricity demand has since grown significantly to the point where supply is not enough to meet the demand, resulting in severe power crisis over the last decade. In a bid to solve the crisis, a power sector reform was implemented in the late 90s to open up the electricity market for private sector participation to help deal with the shortfall. Ghana committed to universal access to electricity as far back as 1989, when only 15 to 20% of the population had access to electricity. The National Electrification Scheme was established to oversee the implementation of the National Electrification Master Plan, which sought to extend electricity to every part of the country by the year 2020. Through programs like the Self-Help Electrification Program, the scheme has been able to extend electricity to about 82.5% of the population as at the end of 2016. Demand for electricity in Ghana has increased by over 52% over the last decade, thus between 2006 and 2016, while installed generation capacity has more than doubled over the same period. The current population of Ghana is a little over 30 million. In the past decade, the country has experienced severe power outages. This has to do with electricity supply challenges, which as of 2006 cost the country an average of $2.1 million loss in production daily. This situation appears to have been improved through installed generation capacity with the coming on board of major players like the independent power producers. Currently, there are 2 hydroelectric power stations and over 8 independent power producers. The 2 hydroelectric power stations are the Akosombo Station and the Boakye Power Station. For instance, as of 2006, the generation capacity was 1,730 megawatts. By 2016, it had increased to 3,795 megawatts. Currently, the Volta River Authority, which operates Akosombo Station and 5 other stations, generates 555.68 megawatts. The other stations, which are operated by VRA, have the following generation capacity. TAPCO generates 189.4 megawatts. PON generates 111.87 megawatts. The KTPP generates 98.96 megawatts. The TT2PP generates 18.92 megawatts. The TT1PP generates 0.33 megawatt, while Boakye generates 1.04 megawatts. For the independent power producers, Avle Power Plant generates 443.14 megawatts. Tika generates 333.98 megawatt. Car Power generates 319.96 megawatt. Amandi generates 194.18 megawatts. Sen Power generates 196.17 megawatts. Senate generates 107.10 megawatts, while ASCA generates 14.76 megawatts. Ameri is in the process of being decommissioned, hence its inability to generate now. Bridge Power is yet to be fully operational. The Ghana Grid Company Limited, GRIDCO, which is mandated to transmit power, has been computing the generation capacities of the over 10 power stations.
There is enough generation to meet demand. As I said, we have about 5,000 installed. On a daily basis, you have more than 3,500 megawatts available. Some generators, but all in all, we have more generation available than what is being demanded. So there's no issue with generation. Okay. I told you that in terms of the generation is for the entire country. Okay, so there's no issue.
Started off at 400 megawatts and in 2013, then we added a 4 megawatt small hydro plant to it. So the total became 404 megawatts at Boakye installed capacity. But currently, because of the low reservoir water level, we are just running one of our plants to produce reactive power in the daytime, and another one comes back at peak to serve load.
It appears Ghana currently has enough power to distribute. So what are the reasons for the electricity supply challenges?
In the transmission today, we're able to see that we have some overloads in certain areas. We have poor voltages in certain parts of the country, especially Kumasi and its environs. So today we want to tell Ghanaians that we are doing something about it. Accra Tema alone accounts for almost 35 to 40% of entire Ghana's demand. So you have huge amounts of power flowing into this area. That is why we need to revamp the system.
What we are seeing now indicates that the transmission infrastructure is being overloaded, and that means that the demand is higher than the capacity of the transmission infrastructure to transmit power to ECG and for ECG to also distribute to our homes. To be able to deal with that, we need to invest in new infrastructure to improve on the capacity of the network, particularly those choked areas.
Other factors are overdependence on thermal and hydro sources for electricity generation and a poor tariff structure, which makes it difficult for utility companies to recover the cost of electricity production. But how do we address these challenges to alleviate the plight of consumers?
We are constructing more substations and more transmission lines to, one, remove these overloads and also create redundancies. What we mean by redundancy is that we want to enter a period whereby even if when one of our lines breaks down, like it happened on Saturday, the customer will not have impact because the others will be able to take up and support it. That is why we are building the lines from Tema to Accra. We are increasing the capacity of the transmission line from about 400 to about 1,400, more than 3 times.
There are management problems where sometimes there's pressure for BUI to generate even when it doesn't have to generate technically. So that is the problem with BUI, and because it's also at the central part, it helps to stabilize the grid if it is on stream. But it doesn't mean that we cannot transmit power safely from Accra or Akosombo to Kumasi and to other places. If we have the robust transmission system, it is still possible to transmit power from the east to the middle part of from the west to the middle part of the country.
The country has been heavily dependent on hydro sources, mainly from the Akosombo Dam and BUI Power Station, which was completed in 2013 for electricity generation. This is because hydro sources are known to provide the cheapest source of electricity as compared to thermal and renewable energy sources. Solving Ghana's electricity challenges will require measures such as diversifying the country's energy mix.
We have started to develop solar projects, renewable energy. And we plan to put in about 150 by next year, 150 megawatt by next year. By tomorrow, by close of tomorrow, we energize about 25 megawatt solar onto the national grid. And by end of this month, early next month, we'll add another 25 to make it 50 megawatts. So that's what we are doing, so that when the water level goes down, we can also run our solar plants.
Consistently, we keep repeating this. We have to see the power sector as a system, all right? Understand the problems that are in the system and fix them concurrently. You can't fix generation before you come to transmission. And that's what we have done. We fixed generation, and now transmission has become the problem. If you fix transmission and their distribution or generation becomes the problem, you have to go and fix it. But we have to look at the system and say that these are the improvements we need to ensure that we have a robust power system that delivers power to the consumer without the fanfare and the terminologies and language around it. So that is really the struggle that government has to go through.
So that was Kojo Ajiman's report. Later on, we'll take you to different parts of the country where consumers have already reacted very negatively to the suggestion that there will be an increase in tariffs. Now, let's start with Ben Boakye. Benjamin Boakye runs one of the key think tanks when it comes to the power sector. He's the executive director of this think tank. Ben, thanks for joining us. Good evening.
Good evening, Bernard, and thanks for having me.
Great. Are you in Doomsaw or Doomkra? Usually these days, many people complain that their power goes off intermittently. But I hope you are fine, and I hope your think tank is following this very important conversation at this point.
Yeah, absolutely. We have been tracking what has been happening in the space, and we fully understand the context and what has changed over time, and why the current intermittent cut in supply to consumers. So it's a situation we're fully aware of. And
so between 2011 and 2016, the power challenges were occasioned by generation issues. We're being made to understand that the recent power challenges are not generation issues. They are not issues of fuel shortage, but they are issues of transmission capacity and having to upgrade the system, and therefore some maintenance having to be done and all of that. Is this the full story?
I think the problem is that, right back from the days of 2011, 2012 to 2015, where we had generation problem, we kept emphasizing that power generation and supply works as a system, all right, everywhere in the world. And if you really want to be able to optimally distribute and sell power, then you have to look at the entire value chain. So what we have failed to do over the years is to comprehensively address the problems in the sector. So we have one problem emerging, and then we quickly rush to address it. And that is why you saw between 2014, 15, all our energies were on fixing the generational problem that we did have at the time. And, after fixing that, that also brought another problem where we said we had more than we needed, which was the excess capacity we've been paying for, and forgot that even to eliminate the excess capacity that you needed an infrastructure to be able to wheel the power from the point of generation to the benefit or the consumer, who ultimately will have to pay for the power. So we sat back and didn't do the needed investment to be able to transmit enough power. Around 2014, when we had the problem, our consumption was barely 2,000 megawatts, 1,800 to 2,000 megawatts. And that was enough for the transmission system to manage. But over time, today we are doing about 3,100 to 3,200 megawatts of power. That has proven to be too much energy for the transmission system to wheel to ECG and subsequently to the consumer. So you see persistent trips in the system, which they call overload. The system is designed such that when the frequency is above or below a certain benchmark, it trips. In Ghana, we used to 50 hertz of transmission. So if you drop below 50 hertz, it could manage maybe 2 points below or 3 points above. But anything above or below those margins, the system will trip. And that is why we keep seeing these trips happening across the country. Essentially, what is happening is that the transmission infrastructure cannot take the power that is being demanded now. So demand outstrips the capacity of the transmission system to be able to send the power.
So the transmission system needs expansion. But what is being presented to us is like, we don't have Doomsaw, but what we have is maintenance and upgrade of the transmission system, occasioning power outages. Do you get me? As against what you're saying, that the power generated is too much for the system to transmit. So the transmission system needs upgrade. I don't think it's the same thing. In a sense, what is being presented appears to be, we are doing some sort of maintenance and upgrade work, and therefore your power has to go off while we do that. But you are saying that the amount of power you are generating, your transmission system cannot handle it. So you need to invest in a transmission system to handle it. Otherwise, the power will just keep tripping, which I think is a bit different from the first point.
Yes, I think the conversation is at two levels, and we have to be clear on that. There are existing infrastructure, and there are new developments that are happening to improve the existing infrastructure. So, I mean, like the Boakye transmission system that is being developed, and then the Kaswa transmission infrastructure that is being developed. These are key developments that would help reduce some of the problems that we have currently. But they are not ready yet. So we have an existing infrastructure that is supposed to send power to your home, all right? And that infrastructure is failing to do the job because it is not up to it. It cannot wheel the amount of demand that is on it at this point. So when the demand goes up, then there is an overload and the system begins to trip. Or if the signal hits the dashboard of GridCo in time, they will kick you out. They will kick some places out to ensure that the system doesn't trip. So those are the problems. And there are other, system problems due to overaging of equipment or, lack of maintenance on some of the systems is also costing some of the trips across the country. But we see much of the overload in Accra and in the Kaswa area, which if we're able to develop or complete the development of the Boakye transmission system and the Kaswa one, that will be able to ease the problem in Accra. There is also another infrastructure that is being developed to change the lines from Tema to Accra, from the existing 33 kV line to 161 kV line, which will also improve the transmission infrastructure for power to be safely evacuated to our homes. But we need to clearly separate the conversation. That helps us to understand why we are where we are and what we need to do going forward so that we don't experience this kind of problem again. So clearly, if you want to separate the issues, the existing infrastructure is failing, but there are developments that can help ease the problem if they come on stream in the next month or two, as we've been told.
We are told that this intermittent power outage will continue until September. Is that a reasonable horizon, or it could go beyond September?
That is difficult for us to predict because, we are not the system managers. The system managers know the timelines they are working with. We can only give them the benefit of the doubt and hope that, they're able to deliver, because it comes with following commitments and ensuring that there aren't any last-minute setbacks that could derail the planned activity. But we are told that, Boakye and Kaswa, for example, that project can come on by August ending towards September. We have some level of confidence in those projects because as far as funding is concerned, it is guaranteed because it's coming from a donor, all right? The MCC project or Compact 2, as part of that compact, we had some funding to develop those transmission infrastructure. So we are guaranteed that funding will be available. So beyond any unforeseen circumstances, those projects should be delivered. But the challenge is beyond just Accra and Kaswa. So we are not sure whether we will have the money to be able to complete other infrastructure that is needed for, say, Cape Coast or Takoradi or Kumasi. Those are the critical things that we need to now begin to find out from the system managers, whether funds will be made available and whether the technicians will be on site until those projects are completed.
You issued a report or an advisory paper on power sector priorities for government action, March 2021. Under transmission, you made a very startling revelation, and if you permit me, I will just quote it for your comment. You basically said that the national transmission system, out of the capacitor bank installed capacity of 994.7 MVAR, only 261 or 28% is currently in service. And then you said also that load flow studies indicate that if capacitor bank equivalent to 90% installed capacity are restored into operation, it will shave off 25% of their losses. I don't understand all of the technicalities, but it suggests to me as if our transmission system is really in a poor state. Is that what these numbers suggest from your report?
I think those were some of the things that we were shocked, to see that they even exist in government-owned documents. Because within the transmission infrastructure, there are cheaper elements that can be absorbed or easily be dealt with. And one of it is the capacitor banks. And the capacitor bank essentially are your system infrastructure that allows you to regulate the voltage. Because people are plugging in into electricity. You're not able to know who is coming on his iron, who is coming on his TV at what time. So the capacitor bank regulates that voltage to ensure that when the demand is rising, it is producing enough power. It is as simple as, for example, if you are receiving water into your house and the pressure is not high enough, you can decide to put an overhead tank so that the water drifts into the tank so that when you need it, you can have a high pressure from the tank. So that's what the capacitor bank actually does, to provide the needed voltage when people turn on their equipment. And we realized that, of the 944 megawatts of installed capacitor banks, government's own record shows that only 28% was functional. And they further indicate that if they were able to improve that infrastructure to about 90%, at 70%, they will be able to reduce 35 megawatts of power. At 90%, they will be able to reduce 38 megawatts of power. What that means simply is that by not having those capacitor banks functional, we are losing about $2.5 million of revenue every single month. And then we went on to check how much could this capacitor bank really cost on the market. And you're looking at about $10 million to even buy new ones of the capacitor bank. So the question really is, who is wasting $2.5 million whilst a $10 million equipment remain non-functional? So those are some of the problems we have with the power system. And we think that beyond the financial, these issues could be managerial. Because, if you have a $10 million bill, you cannot waste $2.5 million because of that bill every month. You calculate a year out of that, and you would have spent more than what you needed to buy new components to fix the problem.
Thank you. This is the point of view. Tonight we're trying to examine the case for an adjustment of tariffs. Don't forget, the last major tariff adjustment was done in 2019, and we're trying to understand where we are with the power sector. My guest, I have, of course, Ben Boakye of ACEP, also joined by the CATS International Africa Resource Center's Apia Adomaku Kusi. We'll come back and look at the pros and cons of the proposed tariff adjustment. PRC says they've received a proposal. We don't know the full details, but we're going to examine this. Let's know what you think. Send us your comments on the WhatsApp number on the screen. Stay with us.
Good Day Energy Drink keeps you going. Available in major supermarkets and shops near you. Excessive drinking can be detrimental to your health. Not recommended for persons under 18 years, lactating mothers, pregnant women, and people sensitive to caffeine. This advert is FDA approved.
Welcome back to The Point of View. Tonight we are asking whether the proposal from the ECG, Ghana's power distributor, for an upward adjustment, a major tariff review, is justified. Don't forget, we have an automatic adjustment formula. When there's a power tariff adjustment done, for example, the last one was 2016, then there was 2019. So this will be the third one since that period. The automatic adjustment formula uses essentially the interest rate and exchange rates and then the other things to sort of inflation rate and exchange rate to adjust it intermittently. But this is a call for a major review. I have on the, of course, the Zoom Boakye of Africa Center for Energy Policy. I also have the Chief Executive of CATS, which is a consumer protection institution in Ghana, Adomako Kusi on the program. Let me take you to Kumasi briefly though, because when the initial proposal was made last week by the ECG, we spoke to some of the customers in Kumasi where the power cuts have been quite serious. Here are some of their views on the proposal.
Ghanaians have been experiencing intermittent power supply in some parts of the country. Officials of the Ghana Grid Company say the recent power fluctuations are as a result of an ongoing maintenance work expected to end in September. At a public forum on Thursday, April 8, 2021, the Managing Director of Electricity Company of Ghana, Kwame Agyemang-Budu, suggested that the company needs more funds to support its operations and be more effective. It has therefore proposed an increment in electricity tariffs. This proposal is, however, not sitting well with many, with some residents and business operators in Kumasi kicking against it. They want the company to take steps to address the current challenges with power distribution before any such proposal for increment is put on the table.
As for the lights, the increase, they shouldn't talk about the increasing. They should fix about the light first before they will talk about increasing the light. Because if we come to work, we sit there boring, no lights, no, you can't do anything. So please, we are pleading them that they should fix the light before they will increase the light.
The tariff that they want to increase it. In fact, they came out and saying that the colonial have been losing a lot of money because of the colonial, and some people have been even lost their jobs. But if they want to insist to increase the tariff, in fact, it will not help us. It will not help the citizens over here, because now those are working, they are losing their customers, and we are here, we don't know what we should do. So if you increase the tariff, in fact, it will not also help us. So I also suggest to the authority that they should relax and exercise patience about the increment of the tariff. That's my suggestion.
Moreover, they can't increase it. Who increase? We don't have lights. We need lights or maybe lights in our houses, and then you are saying you are increasing it. No.
I say, and I say, TV woman say, Kobani say, almost 2 light bemudia, the how can say bre. And we say, eti one crowd business in Koyi, Sikasama Kwayedi.
Meanwhile, some business operators and residents have reiterated calls on authorities to make available a load shedding timetable for the region.
In Africa here, in fact, we are facing a lot of challenges because of the power shortage. At times, the power may go off without information, without the authority informing us. So because of that, we are losing our items. In fact, our items, for instance, my refrigerator got spoiled because of power shortage. I suggest to the authorities, if they want to put off the light, they have to give us the time frame, especially maybe the duration, maybe 1 hour in the evening or something, so that we may be aware of us, the way we can also schedule our things and our items, so that whenever there's a power shortage, we will not be hurt, we will not be fumbling, or we will not spoil, or we will not lose our properties.
They should let us know. We need information. Since they are not communicating and we don't know anything about it, I can be there and then maybe I'm really expecting something, or maybe as I'm saying about the phone call, it's really important. If I can't charge my phone, how can I get information from someone or hear from other people? So at least they should let us know. And also, we have fridges in our houses. The office right now, like maybe your things are in the fridge, say. So all I want from them is that they should really communicate to us as to how they will be offering it and then honoring it at the same time.
So far, any DSC our light and one, Sisi Obia and Cashin Chere, oh, ha nedum, a high half quanta, light no too much. omutumi dumu no sisi ayeti ehu de be na afon betumi atranse wo twen a be ya light no omo nso omo nka hwe nkyereye no ansi yete hwa e twen se light ne beba yes a yedwuma no so ama aba fom pa ene ye pamade no cause obia onim se dum so ho bia no onfa na de ma se yema no osuru kwakoto ready made yenso eno an edi twa rent de ye bibia nto mo mpa bibi nka nkyereye sei ana ye mamo omo hihya man say time see e bedum no ne yehu say be sori ahomache abeye anansi wan so madum yenim time.
Welcome back. So those were views from Kumasi. Clearly they are not in favor. Let me introduce Apia into the discussion. Apia, thanks for joining us on The Point of View. Good evening.
Thank you very much, Bernard, and your happy viewers.
So you are with the CATS Africa Resource Center. What does CATS do, and why is CATS interested in tariff issues? In fact, I recall in the last debate in this week, your voice has come up quite strongly. You've said reduce electricity tariffs to reflect current production costs, cuts to PRC. This was April 2020. April 2020, there was a story that you said tariffs should be reduced to reflect production costs. This was a year ago this week, April 2020. So what is your reading of the situation, and what do you make of conversations around increasing tariffs around this time?
Okay, thank you very much, Bernard. I think the utility companies have put up a proposal for tariff review, and the PRC is about to consider their request. But we, on behalf of consumers, we believe that there's no need for any tariff review beyond the automatic adjustment. For example, last year, crude oil prices came down significantly. There was almost 80% reduction from the previous adjustment. We petitioned the PURC to reduce tariffs, but PURC did not reduce tariffs. And now that these companies, ECG, VRA, and NED, and these other producers, they have all kind of gang up and they are asking for tariff review. I think that we don't need any tariff review. If PURC will be very good to Ghanaians, they should give us the data, and then Ghanaians will be able to look at the data and see whether there's any need for any power adjustment. Already, nothing has changed much. Prices of crude oil have not gone up. Exchange rate and other variables have also remained constant. So I don't know what is actually necessitated the need for tariff review. So I believe that there is no need for any tariff adjustment for this particular year.
Irrespective of the fact that the GridCo is trying to upgrade their system, and the fact that we are in power cuts induced by transmission challenges, and the GridCo have said repeatedly that they would need investment, and ECG is also saying the same thing. Irrespective of those facts, you don't think the need for investment justifies a tariff review at all?
Bernard, we all know from economics that when a business, if you want to invest, you go and borrow money to do investment. And then what you sell to customers is the cost of running your services. So if there is a need for any major investment in the system, they should go to their bankers and borrow money and let Ghanaian consumers pay for the cost of the electricity that they are. Of course, the PURC formula for coming out of tariffs also factors in the cost of capital. So, but their issue of that we are going to borrow much, and so that should allow for tariff review, it doesn't hold water. And let me tell you one thing. Should PURC succumb to this demand from the utility companies, it's going to make the cost of electricity in Ghana so high that most businesses will find Ghana inhabitable to do business. Already, we are not competitive. We are only competitive on our left. But then if you come to the production side, goods produced in Ghana is so expensive that people even prefer to import goods from Europe and Asia and other countries. When they come to Ghana, they are able to compete even on quality. So if all the factors militating against you, if they should allow for tariff review, I think that private sector businesses will find it very, very difficult even to compete under this AFCFTA agreement that is all signed up to, whereby businesses are also producing and exporting to African countries. So it just goes beyond what the power companies are saying. There are other economic dimensions. And seriously, there are a lot of technical losses. We all know it, administrative losses. All these things are not being addressed. And yet, the low-hanging thing that these companies are always demanding for is tariff increases. But I think that for this time, the PUIC should tell the energy companies to go back and look at a better way of running their goods, that they don't have to put any burden onto the Ghanaian consumers.
All right, we'll come back to you. Thank you. Adumako is the Chief Executive of CATS International, Consumer Unity and Trust Society. It's a civil society organization, a lobby group that protects consumers, and they've been working for a competition law in Ghana, and they don't think it's time for tariff adjustment. Now, Ben, let me come back to you. You sort of understand the need for investment in the transmission service. I recall 2 years ago when the discussion on tariff adjustment was being done, I interviewed somebody from Gridco, and the Gridco said they only get less than 5% of the final amount we pay as tariff. A bulk of the money goes to ECG and VRA and the other power producers. So what are your thoughts on the timing and the request from ECG for a tariff adjustment?
Yeah, I think it's really not about timing. It's about ensuring that the tariff is cost reflective. And that means that how much it costs to generate power, transmit power, and distribute power can, at the barest minimum, be recovered. So those are the issues that we interrogate. Because if you are not recovering cost, then somebody must avail himself or herself to be able to pay for the margin. And that is what the problem has always been. We subsidize the power, and sometimes we don't pay for the subsidy, and it accumulates. So any proposal to increase the tariff would be analyzed on those bases to ensure that we are not just increasing it, but we are passing on the true cost of power, to the consumer. But we have to also state that over the years, we have been paying for significant inefficiencies in the tariff, which really burdens the few credible consumers. If you pick your tariff and you check how much goes to ECG currently, as of first quarter 2021, receives 31.5 pesos per every kilowatt of electricity sold. Out of that, 15 pesos goes to pay for waste, for inefficiency, for theft in the system. And that is not fair for the ordinary consumer who really wants to pay for electricity and use. So over time, what we have been doing is to pass on this waste to the consumers who really want to pay for electricity, and people enjoy electricity for free or they steal it. So our concern really has been, how do we deal with that menace to ensure that people who are using power would pay for it? Otherwise, we'll come every year for an increment only to pay for people who increasingly are devising ways to steal power. And that is a major problem that the tariff has to really, the conversation around tariff has to address. We have seen that from the last review to now, ECG's losses has jumped about 2 percentage points, right? And that is not encouraging. PRC's benchmark for them is supposed to be around 21 percent of losses. They are doing 26 today, all right? So what that means is that if you give them $1 million of power to distribute, about $260,000 cannot be accounted for. And that is unforgivable, So we need to retool the system, ask of ECG how they will change their ways, be able to monitor the power system to ensure that who pay for power. If people pay for power, the wastage can come to reduce the tariff rather than increasing it. Because few people are increasingly being burdened to pay for power. And some of the leakages are difficult to explain away. How management will sit back for that to happen. Today, it's easier to get illegal connection than to get regular connection or connection with ECG. You just call somebody you want an illegal connection within the ECG's own system. You'll get people to come.
Yeah, but so you're talking about the increase has to reflect the cost build-up or the cost of producing the power. Now, your colleague on the line, Adumaku, says that last year, exactly around this week in April, there was a fall in demand for crude oil and natural gas. The current price for natural gas fell and has been lower than it was when the tariff was raised in July. He called on PRC to reduce the tariffs, and that fell on deaf ears. So it will be a bit difficult for the PRC to now, and as we speak, those things haven't really gone up. Okay, so even though we haven't seen the full request from the ECG, can you imagine the kind of basis they would use to ask for an increase? When a year ago, the major inputs into power generation had gone down, they didn't reduce it. What possible argument could they make to the PURC? Or have they made? Because I haven't seen the full document, but they said they've submitted something to the PURC. What kind of arguments are they making in that document, if you've seen it?
No, I haven't also seen it, but I think the context should define some of these conversations that we do have, right? Ghana's fuel supply chain today is not significantly influenced by the global market because a chunk of our power now is being generated from gas. And these gas have long-term negotiated tariff. They do adjust them periodically, marginally, upwards to account for some parameters on the international market, though. But it doesn't flow with, say, Henry Hub or LNG spot price that can change the trend dramatically. So, if gas price come down on the international market, it doesn't mean that gas price has come down on Ghana and Ghanaian market, because we have a long lead arrangement with ENI and all the producers on how much gas, how much they should sell the gas to us for the long haul, all right? And it's the same with Nigeria gas. So we have a long-term arrangement, and that fixes the price. It makes some of these adjustments quite predictable. So the key component really will be exchange rate differentials. So if the exchange rate, worsens, then it has to you have to pass through. If equipment costs go up, then you have to pass that also through. So those parameters really is what we consider in Ghana at this point. But I also should say that even for the gas price, we are under recovering at this point. Because remember in 2017 when government reduced the tariff on the back of a negotiated gas price, that negotiation hasn't still been finalized. Yet the gas price that was given by government is what PRC used. So we have been undercutting the true gas price by about $2 per MMBTU. And that is what is also creating excess debt in the system, because you're not recovering the cost of the power. So government has to once in a while cough some money from the budget.
So just to get you straight, you are saying that if we look at the various issues, it's not really about fuel cost, but exchange rate and other issues could be more instrumental than just the issue of the fuel cost. That's number one. Number two, you are suggesting that it could go either way. You are not completely ruling out an upward adjustment. You're saying it could be adjusted upwards or rejected. Is that what I should take from what you're saying?
Let me explain it. For business as usual, we have to increase the tariff. If we are going to stay inefficient, we're going to have the transmission system failing the way it is failing. We have to adjust tariff to be able to accommodate the waste. I mentioned to you how much GRICO is wasting in the transmission system because of some investment they have to do, and the wastage in ECG because of investment and also ensuring that people pay for power. If we don't fix that, for them to be able to maintain the system, the tariff has to go up. and that burden will sit with a few responsible tariff payers, really. So the other option really is to also give them higher bench, for them to go and ensure that they can collect revenue for electricity consumed, and let people pay where they have to. Sanction their own people for championing illegal trade of power in Ghana. So those are the other side. If they were to improve efficiency, that efficiency can cover the need for adjustment in the tariff. All right. So those are the conversations when we see the proposals. Those are things that we will have to probe into to see what kind of adjustment are they requesting.
Fair enough. But Apia, you don't see. Yeah, thank you. But Apia, you don't see any possible scenario under which a proposal for tariff adjustment upwards should be accepted. Apia.
I am not a blind person. I mean, you can't be ignorant to realities. If these companies are able to submit a reasonable demand based upon the market factors, I think that then the rule of reason should prevail. And I think we should give them that benefit of the doubt. But for me, I still think that the regulator, the PRC, should rather defer every power adjustment and allow these companies to go back and fix all the things that can be fixed at their end, collect all revenue that are outstanding before allowing them, any other increase. Because the few people who are paying, they will increase the tariffs and then they will still collect our money, and then they will not go and collect those outstanding. As of now, I don't know how much ECG has in their books that they have not been able to collect. So the PRC can do that and ask these companies to go and collect. And of course, I don't know how much government indebtedness to the companies. Has government also paid its liabilities to the companies? We don't know yet. And sometimes the power companies find it more easier to come to us because we have no say in the process to demand us to pay more, and then they leave the bigger players, that is the government of Ghana, and those who are also not paying, and then rather come and demand more money from us. So seriously, PRC should rather give us, as Bernard said, that Benjamin said, they should give them a high benchmark. But for me, I'll urge the PRC to defer any adjustment. And if they need to invest, they should go and borrow money to do investment, and then that investment will actually be catered for. Because in the past, we've heard all these things before. Oh, we need more money to do investment. We need more money investment. Anytime investment. Now they are not even talking about the high cost of generation. They are talking about what? Obsolete equipment. I remember in 2015 or so, we were asked, the tariff increase was such that it averaged around 100% or so. And we are now in 2021. Even 2 years ago, there was also a major review. So the question we're asking ourselves is that how did these companies utilize the revenue that came to them? And these are some of the questions that we need to do. Maybe the Auditor General could also go and audit how UCG spends their money to ensure that they actually, because UCG is a public entity and we have the right to know how taxpayers' money are being spent by this company to see whether they are spending it in the line of their duty or they are doing something else.
If you have a comment, just send it to us by WhatsApp and we'll scroll it down there. I know from the PRC's way of doing things appear that they have to engage stakeholders before a major tariff review. I also know that the review is supposed to be done at least once every 2.5 years. For the past few years, sometimes it's delayed to 3 years. What kind of questions should the public ask? Because I don't know whether this year they will do it, because from what I understand from the PRC rules, they are supposed to do stakeholder engagement. I don't know whether they'll do it in the COVID era. What kind of questions should Ghanaians ask the ECG, VRA, and Gridco in those fora before they agree to, if they would agree at all, to the tariff adjustment upwards?
I think the first question that every questioning mind would ask the PRC is that PRC should first make the data that they use to calculate tariffs, because we know it's automatic adjustment. So once we have the data, even by you don't need to do quantum mechanics to be able to know how much the next tariff review will be. It's like tariffs in this country has become more like oracles. You need to consult an oracle to know how much the price will be. So PRC needs to be very, very open with the raw data so that institutions, research institutions, and academia can also ask that. Number two, the question we need to also ask whether the PURC is doing very, very good supervision of the utility companies, because these companies were asked to reduce their losses, and they have not been able to reduce their losses significantly. So eventually the consumers are still paying for the inefficiencies of the system. So what has been the role of the PURC in ensuring that the losses that the benchmark that they give to the power companies are being reduced? You can't just say that reduces by this and then they are not reducing it, and then once they come back to you, you still give them the tariff adjustment upwards. I think Ghanaians want to know the extent at which the TRC has played in ensuring that these companies comply to the various benchmarks that were set during
Thank you. Let me take a final comment from Ben. Ben, I noticed with interest that your report, your latest advisory paper on the power sector, which pops up at you when I get to your website, did not recommend anything on tariffs. You had some very strong recommendations on production, as generation, distribution, and transmission. You didn't say anything about tariffs at all. That's quite curious for me. Was that deliberate?
Yeah, I think there are problems that we have to fix. And if we don't fix the problem, the tariff adjustment would not yield anything. And even currently, even though the utilities may be asking for tariff adjustment, it's not only ECG that will request for adjustment. I know VRA will do the same, Gridco will do the same. But the more tariff will pile up, the more uncompetitive the grid becomes. You would recall recently, before the oil price collapsed, generating your own electricity was cheaper than even hooking onto the grid. All right. We are now at a point where we are almost at par. So if you increase it and it becomes much more beneficial to turn on your generator, those who have generators will turn on and the grid will be redundant. And that also creates its own cost. All right. So there's some balancing act that ought to be done. But most importantly, fixing ECG and the distribution problems is what is critical at this point. Because if power is sold and you are not able to recover the money, you cannot pay Gridco, you cannot pay ECG for the system to function. Between 2019 and 2020 alone, we're told about 1.3 billion Ghana cedis was lost to losses and wastage in the system. That cannot continue. But we also agree that there is a need for retooling of the system. And if you want to retool it, you have to put it on the tariff, or you attract an investor who want to put in the money and recover over time. And that's why we're recommending that we have to revisit the concession arrangement and ensure that the private sector brings on the money to be able to invest in the system, so that you don't put everything on the tariff and that ends up discouraging people to stay on the grid.
Thank you very much, Ben Boakye, who's the Chief Executive of the Africa Center for Energy Policy, the leading power sector or energy sector think tank in Ghana. And of course, Apia Kusi Adomaku, Country Director of CATS Ghana, which is a consumer protection public policy think tank. Well, we'll wait to see what the PURC decides, but thank you so much for watching tonight's edition of The Point of View. My name is Bernard Avle. Stay with City TV. We'll be with you next time. Bye-bye.
Point of View is sponsored by First National Bank. First National Bank. How can we help you?